see how this profession is carried on, and then you start getting independent. And this, what is the right time for that will differ, person to person, practice to practice. For a law graduate who is delving into litigation, court litigation, often it is seen that they get independent fairly quickly. Although the reason for that is that they are not initially paid as well if they choose to become a junior lawyer to a senior lawyer. So they learn very quickly, and then they start taking up their own small matters simultaneously. And in few years, it could be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, depending upon each and everyone's capacity, they do become independent. For someone like a corporate lawyer and for a transactional lawyer, as ma'am was describing, perhaps it would take slightly more number of years. When you have become an expert, you can say you have become an expert, you have advised for a number of years, you've gained that experience, and you can be a trusted advisor for your client. As you would have noticed, when you go out and you ask for a doctor that I'm ill, whom can I go and show myself? They said he is a general practitioner, he is a physician with so many years of experience. In lawyers, there's a joke that, okay, you are a lawyer, how kitne baal safed hain? Safed hai bhi ki nahi hai? धूप में बाल नहीं पकाए. So everybody looks for an experience. So if a fresh law graduate of 23 years starts his own office and say, I'm an expert, I can advise you, then probably it's too early. And college and university education is just a precursor for what you are about to learn when you start practicing. All the concepts, all the theory that you learn in during your college and university days are very important, but you need to apply them to the real life situation and gain that very critical and important experience before you start advising your clients. Because I personally take it that all my clients are like my patients, and I'm saving them. I may not be saving their lives. My job may not be that important, but I consider, at least at my level, it to be that important that my wrong legal advice can land a person in trouble. So probably not so soon, but yes, at some stage when the person feel confident, he should venture out. All the this law firm phenomena, this big legal organization like law firms, like LPO, are a recent phenomena in our country and in the world also. Lawyer conventionally were one-person shop. They used to work for few years for someone else, and they all used to set up their own offices. I'm calling it a shop just to simplify the example, although we call ourselves professionals. But yes, so once you have some experience, please do venture out on your own.
Yeah, thank you, Shivendra. That's so nice of you. The points are very valid, and your point was exactly exact. What I was thinking is it doesn't matter that you have done a legal or what. If you want to start a business, you can. You just need some skills and you just need some confidence to start.
Yes.
Yes. So okay, thanks, Shivendra. Now let's move on to the third panelist. So Anmol, this question is for you.
Yes.
Where do you come across legal scenarios in your routine life, and where do you see law as a part of your
Thanks,
system?
sir, for the question.
System?
Yeah. So again, if I think of law, right? So, and from my daily routine, subtly or explicitly, we ourselves can see law to be a part of our life in various ways, like various, we don't even know, and we are following that law, or we are doing that particular thing. So if you ask me, in my perspective, law is basically a pure, underlying common sense, which is there triggered with us, to ensure that we are following what exactly is required as a matter of, a community living, or probably a living in a society, in a country, in a land, right? So it's just that the basic common sense has been inscribed or described in the form of, uh, in the form of section, in the form of act, and if you're doing something against it, if you're doing something which is detrimental to the society, harming anyone, so there are penalties to it, there are prosecution to it. So I think it's just merely sort of a common sense, which is which is described. But again, like when we see, okay, it's a common sense, so why do we need law, why do we need lawyers, why do we need all those things, right? But in my understanding, again, this is my experience overall, that you to get a complete clarity of certain things, to get a complete understanding of a pure common sense, I would say, again, in my understanding, uh, there needs to be a lot of work done to understand that simplicity, simplicity of life, simplicity of things, so that things become much more crystal clear, and we will live in a harmony, and we have a win-win in a lot of aspects of life. So I think that's there, and I would really appreciate the kind of work lawyers are doing. Right, I'm myself not a lawyer, right? But again, in terms of the law, in terms of understanding a particular law, and in terms of implementing it in our day-to-day life, or maybe in business, so there is a lot of learning which happens, to get a grasp of particular like methodology or particular insights behind creating of particular a particular section of law, or a particular thought behind it, right? So it gives a good lot of good learning overall per se for all of us. So that is something which is a bigger advantage, not just understanding the particular law, but overall developing ourselves as a human being, or developing ourselves in terms of our evolution. So in my personal understanding, right, though I'm not a lawyer, but I take care of a lot of legal aspects with our team of law, with a really good team of lawyers. So Shivan is also, like we regularly interact with for a lot of our assignment, a lot of our things. So yeah, it's a overall journey altogether. And to really answer your question more elaborately, yes, there are a lot of aspects of lives where we subtly or very explicitly, we come across law in our life, and we ponder upon, but yet we don't really realize it, because obviously we have that subtle understanding. Okay, law means, okay, there is a litigation, there is this, there is that, there is a particular subpoena which is being filed, so again, the perspectives are different, right? But yeah, I mean, there is a very granular thought which is there, which creates a bigger tree called a law, or a legal system, or a judiciary overall. So yeah, that's my particular thought process over it. So yeah, Sid,
Thanks.
that's
Thanks, Anmol. Thanks, Anmol. And audience, you can just put your questions in the message box. If we have time, we can ask them. So my second question is a second round of questions, and I want to begin with Anu ma'am. So ma'am, my second questions to you is, how good is idea of getting into legal reporting or journalism? Should we get into legal reporting or journalism? Is this a good idea?
Definitely, with the current scenario that we are in. And see, information technology has had a very important role to play in the outlook of our legal profession. Right from, if I were to talk about probably 10, 15 years ago, when the process of digitization had started, and we started coming across online portals like Manupatra, SEC Online, which made our research much easier. No, they put everything on the same panel, and you did not need to go to an actual library to refer to something or to research on something. So that's how the process of information technology has improved, and it has improvised the legal profession. Now, if I were to talk about legal journalism or content creation or legal editor, taking up the profile of a legal editor, you may see, if you ever happen to go on LinkedIn, you will see so many startups which have something to do with legal content. Now, either it could be the earliest understanding could be of writing a legal blog. So if let's say, I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for the last 6 years, and I have a pretty good hold over subjects that I teach. But let's say one day I want to know that, okay, a traffic policeman stops me and asks me to pay a fine because I had parked my vehicle in a non-parking zone, and he asked me for a particular amount of fee or fine. I probably do not have the kind of time. Let's say I don't have internet at that point of time. I can't argue my way out with him, and I have to pay. But I will want to come back home, Google out, and find out that what is the actual amount that the Motor Vehicles Act schedule provides that you have to pay. Now, once I do that, I may also, while doing the research on Google, go across and read some blog that somebody has written. So that's one of the most easiest way to begin a career. And even if career may not be the right word, because blogging will not start paying you off directly. It has a lot to do with the number of hits that you get. your search engine optimization. There's so many other things that goes into it. But if I do not consider that for a moment, if I consider, okay, aapka blog is pretty popular, for example, Legal Services India or Loctopus for that matter, it's a pretty popular blog. You can always monetize it. You can get money out of it. So blogging is a very, very good idea. Legal blogging. One, it keeps you updated. Getting your entire energy into preparing a paper, research paper, an article, and then securing publication of it in different legal journals may be a time-taking task. But blogging, legal blogging, is a much faster way where you can not only update everybody who's reading your blog about any recent happenings that are, that recent developments that take place in law, and you also sort of keep a track on, acha, Supreme Court ka, there's this recent decision. Supreme Court has said something about this. So this becomes very easy when you are in the field of content creation. Now, apart from blogging, you can also become a member of an editorial team. So things like Law Seco or I've seen a couple of them on LinkedIn. Worldwise, Lawwise, Legally Yours, Legally India. All of these are basically startups which have some or the other role to play in providing uh, orientation to students of law or graduates of law. For example, Law Seco very, very frequently carries out or conducts these boot camps. For example, they would be conducting a boot camp on contract drafting. Then they would be conducting a boot camp on arbitration and mediation rules. So, content creation is is a much sought after field, and I think it's going to become more and more popular. In unfortunate times like we are stuck in a pandemic thanks to Corona. Content creation is one of the biggest avenues that has come out of it. So many firms, so many companies have started, so many startups have begun their foray into this field because they have so many there's so many law students, there's so many graduates who do not have the who do not have the opportunity of going to a court. What's the next best thing that you can do? You can probably train law students, you can train law graduates. So all of that becomes easier to do if you have an understanding, if you have an interest in content creation. Obviously, being a part of a research team, being a part of, let's say, you can work with Manupata, you can work with SEC Online, you can work with different law journals that are there online or offline. You can be a part of the editorial team, and in that capacity also, you can generate content. So definitely something that a law graduate should definitely consider, especially if they have a penchant, if they have an interest in writing. This is something that they can definitely consider.
Wow. Okay, amazing. That's really amazing. Before moving, so let's move on to Shivendra now. So my question is very, political. So can a law graduate be a good politician? Why is having a law degree beneficial for anybody interested in politics? Is that so?
See, for that matter, anybody can be a politician. You don't even need a degree. Forget about a law degree to be a politician. To be a good politician, also, politics on its own is a different ball game. But to answer your question, yes, a law degree or being a lawyer is definitely an edge if you want to be a politician, and this has been historically true. It is not only true that this is true today, where we see a Tejasvi Surya or we see who's a budding politician. He's an NLS Bangalore grad, and other eminent lawyers like late Arun Jaitley, Kapil Sibal, finance ministers like P. Chidambaram, ex-finance minister. I mean, they all are lawyers. Hari Ravi Shankar Prasad. But historically also, Jawaharlal Nehru, his father Motilal Nehru, the first president of India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, our father of nation, Mahatma Gandhi, these all were lawyers. And the reason simply for a lawyer to turn out to be a good politician is public dealing. You have to deal with public people on a daily basis, your clients, judge, other lawyers. It's not a desk job in that sense, where you are limited to your few files or in these days, your laptops. It's something that requires you to go out in the society. It requires you to have some influence at some stage. It requires you to have so many skill set, which you need to stay relevant in a society. Your thought process is very broad. Your horizon expands. There are many things, and I'm not belittling any other profession, that it's only when you're a lawyer you could be coherent in your argument, you could be very articulate in the way you put it. Our prime minister is a very good speaker, everybody says. He's not a lawyer, so it's not that only a lawyer can be a good speaker, but a lawyer could, there are chances that you are a lawyer, you can be a good speaker because you know what it takes to succinctly put forth your argument in a 30 seconds time to convince a judge, because he has like 50-70 matters that day and you get only 15 seconds. So you value that 15 seconds, and in that 15 seconds you have to make a point. So that's apart from holding on to your audience, which is very much required, a part of public speaking, which is very important to be a good politician and to be a good in public rallies and be relevant everywhere. Apart from that, why do we choose our politicians, elect our politicians? What is the first thing that they do after getting elected? They go to parliament. What happens in parliament? The laws are made in parliament. Laws are framed in parliament. Laws are presented in parliament. Laws are opposed in parliament. If there is somebody who has a good understanding of law, of reading a law, of understanding a law, of dissecting a law, then that's an asset for anyone. Very often you would have seen that when a law is proposed in a parliament, from the leader of opposition, from the other side of the opposition, it's more often than not a lawyer turned member of parliament, whether it's Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha, who gets up to present the law if you're from the side of the government, and to oppose that law from the side of the opposition. We, as Anmol was saying, that we don't know, but law is such an important part of our life. We practically live by the law every day, small little things, right from the traffic signal thing, which Anu ma'am mentioned, to you see all the what is happening around these days. Forget about Corona, just pre-Corona, if I can take you. Farmer protest, anti-CA and RC protest. What are these? These are just 2 to 3 pages of legislations, which has created such a stir in our society. Everybody is involved. What is it? It's just a law or a proposed law written on a piece of paper. And it has rocked our political system. It has rocked the entire politics of the country, nationally as well as internationally. So yes, if you are a lawyer, it gives you a definite edge to being a good politician, because you understand the nitty-gritties of not only the public dealing, but a lot of other things, which perhaps if you're a good scientist, you are an equally, a person who has achieved a lot and has contributed to the society and to the nation. But what politics is required, perhaps a lawyer would have those couple of skills more than a scientist or a technocrat.
Right, exactly. So, Shivendra, do we need any kind of skill set or a mindset to become a politician? So, do we have some, apart from legal aspect, but do we have some, apart from this legal aspect, do we need some skill set or kind of a mindset which to become a politician? After that, this question will go to Anu ma'am also. After asking to Shivendra.
So this is more on the politics than the legal profession. See, one thing I'll tell you, which is common. So it's something unrelated but still related to the legal profession. Is you need to be flexible to being a politician. You cannot be very rigid. You should be willing to bite the bullet when it comes to that. And that is something which every lawyer is also trained. A lawyer is trained to have a flexible position. So for example, I'll give you my own personal example. I'm not a litigation lawyer. A litigation lawyer is also very flexible. He goes to a court and he goes with this position that, okay, if the judge agrees with me, this is my first line of argument. If the judge does not agree with me, this is my second line of argument. So he has to gauge within a matter of few seconds that this is my alternative position, and I'll get, even if I get this, I have a remedy from the court. Even for a transactional lawyer like me, when I'm negotiating an M&A document or a share purchase document or any other big corporate deal document, there is a wish list with which I go into a negotiating room for my client, that if I get this, this is the best. But at times we understand that the way the negotiations are going on, probably I'm not going to get this. So I have to suddenly change to my next best alternative so that I can still get something out for my client, which is in his benefit, and I satisfy the overall purpose for which I was sent to the room, which is to get something for your client, but at the same time, do not break the deal. No, a lawyer who is a deal breaker lawyer is not a good lawyer, unless the issues are like that. So politicians are also like that. They are very flexible. No permanent friends, no permanent enemies, no permanent position. Today, I would come very strongly for this. Tomorrow, if I have to roll back, I have to roll back. Today, I cannot do alliance with this party because this is totally against my political ideology mindset. But if you'll see tomorrow, I can come into alliance with that party. I can give you a current example. Left and Congress are fighting against each other in Kerala, and they are in alliance in Assam. So be flexible. Perhaps you will be a good lawyer as well as a good politician.
That's a good insights. Can you just move on to Anu ma'am? You have some points, I guess.
Definitely. See, I have a slightly different understanding that Shivendra. He is more about the practical side of how being a lawyer works for you if you decide to become a politician, if you decide to have a career in politics. I believe that adding on, as in taking forward from what Shivendra already mentioned, that one of the biggest roles that are assigned to our parliamentarians is the law making process. And if you are a law graduate, as a part of your curriculum, when you study laws extensively, when you study the interpretation behind the law, when you are taken through different judgments, and you are made to understand what has gone into the mind of the judge when he or she interpreted the case in that matter. You are taught interpretation of statutes as a separate important subject. So all these things put together put you in a much better position to talk about and discuss bills. And we all understand that even if we were to talk about separation of powers in an idealistic scenario, legislature is supposed to be doing the job of making the law. And if they do not make good laws, the entire governance comes tumbling down. So only when the parliament will make good laws will the executive will be able to enforce them. There will be less resistance from people to follow the law, and judiciary will be troubled less. So there will be less people approaching the court saying that okay, they have a problem, they have a grievance with this law. So the problem can be resolved at the very beginning itself if laws are drafted properly. And in drafting, not only your legal acumen, but your understanding of the language, your understanding of the context plays a very important role. And I believe as a lawyer, this is a skill set that we harbor extensively, when we are in law school. Especially if you've been in a law school for 5 years, 3 years, you are, continuously, these skills are tested, these skills are harbored more and more, so that it sort of increases. I'm not saying that every law graduate is going to be an excellent politician, but it's likely that if you do have a law background, you have a graduation in law, then you will be a little better to understand that what the country requires, and you can accordingly, through different propositions, through a private member's bill, you can agitate for that matter. For example, I'm a person who believes a lot in animal laws. I'm a animal welfare activist. So if in future, if I ever do assume the scenario where I also foray into politics, I definitely would want to introduce a bill in the parliament, either through my party, through the sanction of my party, or through in my own capacity as a private member. That I would want to introduce a bill, for example, something that would put let's say, for example, it would put a stoppage on animal testing, in the cosmetic and the toiletries industry, not for the pharmaceutical one, but any animal testing that happens in these sectors. I may want to introduce a bill, or I may want to introduce a bill that would curb animal breeding, unlicensed, unauthorized breeding. So, because you are a lawyer, because you know the law, because you also know the lacunas in law, when आप जब लॉ पढ़ते हैं तो आपको ये भी पता चलता है कि अच्छा लॉ में ये गड़बड़ भी है या फिर इस पर लॉ ही नहीं है. So that also gives you a very, very good understanding that what is your duty as a parliamentarian. And I think that that's one of the biggest contributions that you can have as a parliamentarian, if in case you decide to take politics.
Thanks, Anu and Shivendra sir, your insights were really nice to us. And now I want to move on to Anmol and ask something about finance fair. So, Anmol, can you just tell us how a finance fair help us law aspirant to pursue his dreams? Anmol, you have please unmute yourself first.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. Thank you so much.
No.
Yeah. This is often. This happens quite often. Anyway, so how does FinancePeer can help law aspirant to pursue their dreams? Okay, so I would love to break this under 2 points. One is like internally, and second is externally. So by internally, I would like to say, I mean, so not just for FinancePeer per se, but for any fast growing company or any fintech company or probably any startup for that matter, right? Uh, there is a lot of things. There's a lot of scope and opportunity for law aspirants, uh, which is there in fintech or any startup. I'll tell you why. So that like I mean the kind of startups, the kind of fintech companies which are coming, the kind of fintech companies which are now. So I think like since 15-20 days, you would see every alternate day a unicorn is emerging, right? So the kind of overwhelming this sector is becoming, the kind of movement which is happening because of tech, which is sort of getting this thing big, right? So so again we see the major part of it as, okay, you know what, there is a tech which is doing it, there is a business development which is happening it, but behind the tech, behind the process, there is a lot of thing which is happening, to streamline everything from the legal perspective, right? So if you would imagine, the exact same scenario, what a particular startup or a particular fintech company is trying to solve a problem, if you imagine that in a brick and mortar way, or and if you see vis-a-vis what a particular company is doing it overall, so there is a lot of structuring, a lot of pasting, there are a lot of carving which is happening in the back end, which a law aspirant or probably a finance aspirant or probably someone who knows the detailed integrities of it, right? So it requires a lot of understanding of business, it requires a lot of understanding of molecularity, right? So again, here someone who is like really really aggressive, someone who is really passionate about these things, like not just with law, but how you can implement law to make something bigger, to make something more scalable in terms of process, in terms of business. So it's a really really good and big opportunity for the folks, like for the folks who are studying right now, who are doing, let's say, 5-year course, 3-year course, or who are just preparing right now. So I think this could be a really big opportunity, and who are emerging as well, like who are sort of like who are just started, or who are like 3-4 years experience, 5 years experience, and who want to create a create the domain per se with respect to their future career prospect. So I think like this particular segment and what we are doing right now, not just with financial but overall as a segment, there is a good quantum opportunity which is there. And here it's not a typical traditional law practice which is happening, right? So here the requirements are such, and the kind of requirement deliverables are such that you need to deliver it like very quickly. So you need to run, you need to just juggle things. Is that because there is a tag time for it, right? So someone who really keeps up that pace, keeps up that pressure, and who delivers it. So the company grows immensely well. So the scope is big, the opportunity is big, the upside is also big. And I've seen a lot of legal professionals who are turned as a good entrepreneur and who are building company across the globe, like not just in India but overall as well, like who have understand the nitty-gritties of it. I may not recollect it right now, but there are a lot of guys who are doing it. So that is one aspect which I see from an internal organization perspective. From the external perspective, as everyone in the call would be aware, what FinancePeer is doing. So FinancePeer is helping parents to pay fees in zero cost EMI, like parents or students, uh, be it zero cost or probably low cost EMI with respect to certain institutions. So here, anyone who's looking forward to go to any school, any law college in India, or maybe abroad, so they can just reach out to FinancePeer for the zero cost EMI option, that or low cost EMI option that we are providing. So that will not just help them to ease out the burden, but also to a lot of aspirant who are sort of neglecting this particular option, and who are neglecting some good opportunities maybe in India or abroad. So this would really help them out to sort of ease out the expense burden from them. So yeah, so that way I think really good opportunity for any law folk who is looking forward to uh, do something good in their career with respect to law as a particular domain.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, in the world, there is a good vast opportunity both internally as well as externally as far as finance is concerned.
Okay. Thanks, Amol. Thanks, Amol. And to the add-on to Anmol. So FinanceP also now giving, I think, educational courses as well. So if you want to,
Right.
learn any course and all, you can just go and download our FinanceP app from Play Store or App Store, and you can also
So
visit
yeah,
our
yeah,
website also.
yeah. Glad you brought that point. So now, we have also started our, Ad Infinity product, wherein, we are sort of aggregating all content, right, from different spheres of education,
Mhm.
right? So we have also added content, with respect to law, right? So wherein, let's say the lockdown is going on, but, like because of which, since a year, we're not able to get good content access. So FinancePay can help you out to select the best of the content, and you can just download it. You can just pay it via FinancePay, and you can just access it at a very reasonable cost,
Right. And I
and
think
and the
now
EMI options.
now people can also buy Apple products on just small EMIs. FinancePay also giving people to
Yeah.
buy a product, buy Apple products in just in small EMIs. I think in zero interest also. Like
Okay. Yeah. That's also there. So you can just access the content on a on an iPad that you may buy, or
right.
maybe a MacBook that you
So
can buy via FinancePay.
right.
So
So
that,
people, if
yeah.
you want to buy an iPhone or a MacBook and anything you want, you can just visit our FinancePay website, or you can just go out to our app. And with that, we are also launching a UA card. Soon you will get to know about that also. In that card, you will, you get to earn rewards, offers. There are a lot of deals and offers just for the UA card users. And soon you will going to, see that coming out. So yeah, and there are a lot of things we are also doing. So we will not talk about it later. But now we'll go for the question answers round. So I think Ame has a question from the audience. I think this question is relevant for I think Shivendra. So the question is, what do you think of automation being introduced in law where AI can scan a document and give real-time solutions? Just the way teaching and medicine consultation is now online, do you think technology will be changing the dynamics in the legal environment?
Certainly it would. There is a certain level of work that can be taken up by technology, something which is which consumes certain number of man hours. However, because legal profession, just like any other profession, is services of personal nature, there is a level of intellect, there is a level of uh, analysis, there is a level of logic involved in breaking down the problem, legal problem, into simple solutions. So it's basically boils down to that AI could be of help, but AI could not replace a lawyer or a lot of things which a lawyer does completely. For example, litigation. For example, negotiation of a document. But yes, AI not only scanning the document and finding certain things relevant, but a lot of other things can also be done through the help of AI. For example, in this case, what automation I could understand, if we go back to all these search engines for legal cases, it is a sort of a technological advancement which we all saw 10 years or 15 years back when we started our law education in college. For example, I am 2003 enrolled and 2008 graduate. When I used Manupatra for the first time in my third year, I remember how in my first 2 year, when I used to go to the library, and Anupam, she will appreciate this. We used to go to the AIRs and check the AIR index and the subject and then the
Interestingly,
case.
Shivendra, I also graduated in 2008. I enrolled in 2003 and graduated in 2008. The same
Wow,
year.
wonderful. So we have seen, we are the floppy disk
Yes.
generation people.
Yes.
From floppy to CD to pen drive.
Yes.
We are those, our first college projects were in floppy.
Yeah.
So automation has, in that sense, has come, and Manupatra made our life so easy that something for which I remember I was researching on a moot court proposition on a criminal law where my moot court problem was on witchcraft, and I had to find a judgment on witchcraft in the criminal jurisprudence, and I had to spend a couple of days in the library when there was none of these things, and our college did not have SCC online by that time. So, and we managed to found a couple of cases for which we spent approximately a couple of days in the library, and it became so much easier after we used Manupatra for the first time in the law firm internship when I did. And I came back to my college and I requested my director that why can't we have these search engines? It makes life so easy. And, graciously he agreed, and we had the Manupatra subscription after that. So yes, automation will come, and everywhere, wherever there is certain inefficiencies, where technology can bridge those inefficiencies, they will come and they will take the place. Anuman, would you want to add something to that?
Thanks,
Yeah, I would just add one thing, that there are certain portions of our law practice or legal services which can definitely benefit out of automation. For example, all your paralegal work. So, for example, when we go to a court to file a case, there's a registry which is being manned by a person who is going to look through the document and find out that, okay, this document lacks in so and so things. So they're going to reject. They will come back to you saying that, okay, you need to change this thing, you need to modify this thing. Only then will your document, petition, application, whatever, will be, it will be registered and it will be put before the court. So that is one thing that can definitely help. In the legal process outsourcing industry or in the contract management industry, automation is already being used. Where if you look at the LPO sector, in the document review department, where you will be asked to work on a software, there would be an app for a software where they have already pre-fed the documents that are there. They will not give you a lot of options. See, essentially lawyering is a custom-based advice. It's a custom-based service. Just say if I go to a nutritionist cannot give the same diet plan to a person who's 80 years old and probably weighs 90 kgs, a 25-year-old person who weighs 60 kgs, or a lactating mother who has other nutritional requirements. They have to customize the services. Similarly, lawyering essentially is customized. You can't have a machine or an auto. You can't pre-feed all possibilities in the system itself. You can't have an exhaustive solution to that. So yes, to an extent, when it comes to vetting the document, identifying the loopholes in the document, again, that is also going to be on a pre-fed basis. That can definitely help in hastening the process, in bringing a little bit of speed, because that is essentially where a lot of time goes into. Like, I'm sure Shivendra will acknowledge the fact that you sometimes have to go and inspect court files. When you're representing a party, you may want to inspect the document, the court file that the court is keeping on record, because you want to ensure that your file matches the file of the court. Every document that the court has, you also have. The court orders that you may not be privy to, you are able to note them down. Now, if they are able to digitize the process of inspection of files, it will be not only a lot of time saving, but it will also save a lot of resources in terms of the place where you have to record, you have to safe keep those files, where you have to ensure that these files are maintained in the proper condition. So automation or AI could definitely help. It could supplement, but as Shivendra rightly pointed out, it cannot be a substitute. It cannot be an alternative.
Exactly. So move on to my last question for the discussion. It's actually I want a solution from all three of you. As we know that we have 2.18 crore cases pending in India, district and lower courts. So is there any solution which we can overcome these all cases and we can just fasten the process? You all three have only 1 minute to speak, so you can go on. We can go with this Shivendra, then Anu, then Anmol. Yeah, Shivendra, please go.
All right.
So a lot of pending cases is also directly proportional to a lot of to humongous population of our country. We cannot just see court cases in isolation. Because of our population, we have so many other problems, pressure on resources in every sector. Judiciary is part of that. Having said that, yes, there is a problem of pending cases, especially in at the stage of lower judiciary, and population is not the only factor to blame for it. There, I think a lot of responsibility is on the lawyers. I'll not say judges, but a lot of responsibility is on the lawyers not to take unnecessary adjournment, and a lot of responsibility is on the judges not to grant unnecessary adjournment, because adjournment are not all the time based on real life situation. It is part and tactics of fighting a case. I don't have much time to explain that in detail, but a lot of time adjournment are not real. They are fake. Let me use that word. It is depending on which side of order you want. If you're happily sitting with an injunction in your favor, then your interest lies in dealing the case, and the other party's interest lies in not dealing the case. So I think lawyers as well as judges should understand that and try to clear as much as backlog as possible without uh, coming to the final judgment as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Shweta. Let's go on to Anu ma'am. Anu ma'am, please unmute yourself first.
Yeah. Although I agree with Shivendra, because it is definitely a big role that lawyers and judges play in the process in the administration of justice. But I believe the problem lies at a much fundamental level. The problem lies with the people and their approach towards judiciary and courts. Like I tell this to my students all the time, that why we do not see so much of pending cases in developed systems like US for that matter, because litigation there for advocacy is very expensive. Going to the court is going to cost you a bomb. And that is why settling matters outside the court is encouraged there. In India, because of this ease and convenience that you can go to the court, and sometimes it's just to irritate the other party, sometimes it is just to seek vengeance, sometimes it is not for anything substantial, but because you have that ease of going to the court, you can approach the court, you can file a case, the filing fees is not much, the ad valorem fees that you have to pay is not that much. That sort of encourages a lot of malicious prosecution, a lot of litigation which is not well founded. So I believe if rather on focusing, because see, we've been talking about how our judiciary is emburdened with so many cases, and that's something that we can't do until the people develop this conscience that they're not supposed to run to the court for every single thing. Now, arbitration and conciliation are trying to do that. They're trying to somewhere bridge the gap and trying to ensure that not, at least in commercial matters, at least in company related matters, you don't have to go to the court that often. So I believe a better solution, a more effective solution, would be to focus on legal awareness, making people realize that okay, this is what you can or this is what you should not be doing, and also to somewhere make the process a slightly expensive process so that not everybody goes running to the court. Now, somebody may think that this will cause a disadvantage to the needy people because they can't go to the court. So let me tell them that we do have the concept of legal aid, where if you fall into the different categories that are laid down in the Legal Services Act, you can procure legal aid. And secondly, if you believe that nothing is happening, you do have an option of writing a letter. And Supreme Court does have letter jurisdiction, where your complaint can be converted, if it does have merit, and you will be given relief. So increasing the cost of litigation or making the legal services slightly more expensive, I believe will have a serious influence on cutting down the number that reaches the court.
Okay, I agree. So Anmol, before moving ahead, I just want to rephrase the question a little bit, because Anu ma'am has just twisted me something. So I want to ask you, Anmol, that if we see other countries, right? So if we talk about USA or well-known countries, so are we lacking in some some management or skills or technology? Are we there's some gap in India, so we are that's why this number is coming out, 2.18 crore cases are still pending. So are we lacking in something, or it's just a corruption, or is India really so in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so there are a lot of aspects to it, right? If you're comparing with someone like US or maybe UK or any country for that matter, right? So firstly, if you have to compare, right? So obviously, in terms of population, also, India is like more than 3x than US. Like US is around 40 CR is what I know as per my last understanding.
We are more than 130 billion.
Yeah, we are reportedly 130 billion, 130 CR, but yeah, I mean, so again, let's not go into that particular discussion. So yeah, so we are like more than 3x in terms of the size of US. In terms of per capita income, also, India is far more lower as compared to US, right? So And so here, like these two are one of the major reasons why, you know, the number looks, the number is substantially higher, right? In terms of things. One of the major thing, as you know, ma'am rightly highlighted, is the attitude of the people, right? So law per se, in my understanding, has been taken in a different way altogether, right? It's the kind of attitude towards law is, it's slightly on the negative perspective. I wouldn't call it particularly negative, but certain dispute oriented perspective, rather than someone who can, you know, really like a someone who can really guide you, consult you in terms of resolution of your issues, right? So hence I think a better way and better methodology to really resolve issues is, you know, by arbitration, which is being used regularly and which have been a part of a lot of agreements. Rather, I mean, whatever agreements that we have been signing, it, most of it has this particular clause, so that the resolution of a particular dispute happens quickly, right? And what, in terms of business, like what I've seen is, you know, though we need to mention these clauses, right? But in the end, it's all about what your relation with someone is and how things are moving, right? So agreement is, you know, the better the relation is, you know, the lower the requirement of, you know, you need to refer to the agreement, refer to any documentation. So documentation becomes, you know, much more like a paperwork that we have done it, right, just to safeguard the worst, right? So it's more of a understanding that keeps things, you know, floated, right? So it's more of the attitude, you know, like if the attitude is better, if the attitude towards a particular thing is good, if the attitude with respect to the relationship and you know, the harmony of a particular transaction is better, so, you know, these issues will not arise much, right? And one more thing which Anupam rightly pointed out is with respect to some petty cases, because of which, you know, these lot of cases look like a very piled up cases. Like I hear a lot of PILs which have been filed on a regular basis for, like, I mean, a lot of reasons are like very, very funny, right? So like, I don't know, like a lot of people try to just test like their, you know, law skills probably. I don't know like what exactly is the scenario here, but I mean, that would be slightly controversial from my end. But here, like there are a lot of such cases where, you know, like I'm sure like PIL is not really that expensive to file, and anyone can file since it's a matter of public interest. So, so a lot of such cases which are there, which again, which our judicial mechanism really needs to work upon, and really need to have a filter on it, right? And obviously, one of the reason that why cases are still stuck, because obviously we need to have that many resources, that many people to really look at those. So I think uh, one very instant thing which can be done is, you know, to increase the quantum of this arbitration, where, you know, we can sort of try and get cases closed quickly. And I think there should be a timeline which again would sort of probably I mean, not just in a general law perspective, but in other aspects where I've seen, you know, in terms of company law, in terms of you know, like majorly in terms of company law, certain things there is a timeline which have come, right? So which is again is again a test done by our like our law. So if that works out well, so I think the number would drastically come down. Not drastically per se, but slow and steadily it will come down, and things would look better, and would be much more comparable, as we see with the kind of numbers that we see with other comparable countries.
Exactly.
So I think
So
that's
thanks.
the perspective.
Thank you, Anmol, Shivendra, Anu, ma'am. I hope you like it. I hope you like the session and
Definitely.
audience. And I also want to thank Ajinkya Diva Patil for this collaboration with us. And at the end, I just want to say a few lines that अगर आपको fee payment करनी है तो finance पे ही करो. So इसी के साथ मैं यहाँ पे panel discussion खत्म करता हूँ. So we'll meet soon. Thank you, sir. Shivendra sir, if you want to say something, you can.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'd like to say that it was really informative, good that I could share something, and very honored to hear the views of Anu ma'am and Anmol also. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. It was great sharing the panel with my co-panelists, and I hope that the students and the people who attended this session will definitely benefit out of it. That's the whole purpose of having these sessions. And Finance Fair, Siddharth, you can count me in for any other sessions that you plan to host in future. I'm definitely going to be available.
Definitely.
Yeah, and just a side note, I don't know whether it's the right thing to say or not, but I also have a YouTube channel where I basically try to simplify the understanding of law by explaining it through movies. So my channel name is Legal Banter. So if you guys are interested in understanding movies, from a legal point of view, movies which touch upon legal concepts, you can check out my channel. I also post content which is useful for students in general. For example, landmark Supreme Court cases, updates, and all that. So anybody who's interested can definitely check out my channel. I leave the name of my channel in the link in the chat as well.
In the chat box.
Legal Banter.
Actually. Yeah, more last words.
Yeah, I mean, great. Yeah, great to know. So yeah, thanks a lot, Siddharth. Thanks a lot, Numama and Shiv. It was really great to interact and have this interesting session where we could really exchange our perspectives and really get a good understanding of things. And I hope the audience would really got some additional understanding of things, right? So I would suggest at least take one particular thing which we have discussed, and so even if you take like one particular thing which we have discussed, so I think the whole objective of the webinars would in my understanding would be really good achieved, right? So that is, so yeah, I mean, looking forward to have some more sessions like that. So yeah, I mean, looking forward. Thanks a lot, Sid.
So thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. We can meet again. And we're gonna put some more webinars like this, more panel discussions like this.
For sure.
Thank you, guys. You can just thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Bye.